So hi, in this session I'm going to show you some of the tools that you will need to be able to create the blend shapes. Um, I've already tested some of them, but I just want to turn these off for now. So because we've used eyebrows and we combined it with the original mesh, and the eyebrows are not separate in this case. There are rigs where the eyebrows are separate and they are controlled with joints, or they're part of the same skin cluster. Um, in our case, it's combined with the mesh. Though they're as a mesh, they can be kind of selected separately like this, but it's assumed that it's part of the single mesh uh, that we bound to the joints. So something to be aware of. That's what we have. What we're going to do, I'm just going to show you some of the tools that we're going to use for BlenShape. So first of all, I want you to ignore these two BlenShape nodes. I'm going to delete them later on. I'm just going to turn them off. So let us assume that we're starting from scratch. So select your mesh and create a BlenShape node. And we call this with your character's name on it. So CH BlenShapes. I've already got a name, so I'm going to call this MCH or my character. That's the BlenShape node. There's one thing that I want you to keep an eye on. If things go wrong when you deform your character with the joints, with the controls, and then you animate the blend shapes, then if something goes wrong, it's a deformation order. So always make sure you've got that sorted so you're aware of it. So if I right click on this on the mesh and go to inputs, all inputs, this is where the deformation order is. Now, when the new shape editor in Maya get this right, but sometimes occasionally Maya gets it wrong, so the skin cluster has to be the first. That's where the mesh is driven by the joints, and then you've got your blend shape nodes, and the last thing is a tweak node. If the blend shapes are above the skin cluster, you simply middle mouse, drag and drop it just underneath the skin cluster. Just make sure that's the case. So skin cluster blend shapes. Now you can see multiple blend shape nodes, or 3 of them in this case. That's because I'm testing. I'll delete these later on. You might just go for one single blend shape and then group everything underneath, and we'll talk about that. So just keep an eye on that. The second thing is, now that we've got a blend shape, and say if we create a target as an expression or a change in the mesh, if I just click on that, it comes with a default name. So if I just call this test shape, and it is, we can only create, sculpt our mesh when the edit is on. So just be aware of that. Otherwise, you end up modeling your character, and then you don't want to model or sculpt your character when the edit is off, because we can no longer model this character or sculpt it unless we create a blend shape for it. So that's another thing to be aware of. So now that we're in the edit mode, we can start making changes to this character's face, let's say, so we can create expressions. This is just for a test, so if I just select this and press the B key, I've got the symmetry on, and when I press the B key, I've got the soft selection on, and I'm just going to do something quite extreme, something like this, and now we can see the effect of the blend shape. Now there are things that I'd like to remind you that you could see on the sculpting shelf. around here you've got the smooth or even out surface detail only for the current BlenShape, and then you've got the eraser, remove the edits for the current BlenShape. These two are not the same as the sculpting tools. For example, you've got another smooth tool there. This smoothes the mesh. This one smooths the effect of the BlenShape. Now the result visually might be similar, but what's happening under the hood is that if you remember painting skin weights, it's the same concept, removing the skin weights almost, in this case removing the effects of the BlenShapes, smoothing the effects of the BlenShapes. So just be aware of that. This is what's happening under the hood. So if I go deform, paint, weights, BlenShapes, as you can see, I can replace certain things. Say for argument's sake, I'm just going to be quite rough. As you can see, I remove the effect from this side. That's what's happening when we use this tool. So yeah, something went wrong there, but that's the idea. I want you to be aware of that. So these are different than the sculpting tools. The sculpting tool, on the other hand, a usual sculpting tool that we can utilize to do certain things. This is quite ugly. I'm just going to delete that. So let's say if I create an expression, again, I'll just do this. And what I'm going to do, just turn these curves off. And I'm going to just erase the effect of the BlenShape around the eyes. Because I don't want them to be affected because we've got the eyelid controls, let's say. So for argument's sake, say we've got this, and then we can use our sculpting tools. For instance, I can use the lifting the surface tool or the brush. Maybe I could create some wrinkles or something like that. Again, you can go into the tool settings by double clicking and then checking its strength, spacing, for example, build up, and that's 100%. Leave it at 10, for instance. Yeah, so something like this, and then you can hold on to your the shift button, and then while using the smooth option, you can then smooth the effect a bit more. Or you can use the sculpting tool. And then we've got the sharpen soft edges tool, where it will actually, what it does, it brings the edge loops closer, so you can create some sharpness. It's not great in this tweaking, but that's the tool. Now there is a problem there because when the eyelids are, when the eyebrows are lifted, you don't get that effect. Yes, we get the compression and squash, but normally you will have this. It doesn't go down. In fact, it goes up. So it's just a test. It normally goes up. Okay. But anyway, just keep an eye on these tools. So sharp and soft edge tool is one thing. Sculpting, lifting the surface, smoothing the effect. Be aware of this one because you will lose the volume. You want to keep the volume intact. And think about skin sliding. Relax tool, this is an important one. I use a lot of this one instead of the smooth because, as I said, it doesn't change the original shape. Grab tool is something that I rarely use. It's a tool that gives you a lot of things, but the trouble with it, it does, you don't have much of a control. It shrinks the parts of the mesh, and it gives you some quick results. It's nice, but suddenly I lost the volume of that eyebrow. Just keep an eye on that one. We get carried away and we use it a lot. I mean, I use it, but I've given up on that one. It's difficult to control. So maybe instead of that, we could just simply use the selection tools and select the mesh with a file off using the B key, and then we can actually shift it and make changes. So it's generally softly lifting the surface, relax, occasionally the sculpting tool. I think these are the ones that I use, and then I use the move tool and to make changes to the mesh and to create the expressions. The other thing I want to remind you is that when you double click on your tools, say the move tool or the sculpting tool, you're going to use a lot of the soft modification. So let me just delete this guy, and then I'll have another one. So let's say if you've got a scenario of this kind of a scenario where you've got the eyebrow mesh and you also want to affect the underlying geometry. Under the soft select, so if I just double click on this one, if you have surface selected, it will only pick the eyebrows, and you don't want that. The idea is to select the volume so that it selects the mesh underneath. Now, it is helpful to select the surface only, especially say around the lips. Say if I want to bring this one down, I'm going to have here we go. Say if I want to bring this down, when it's in surface, it's easy because it doesn't affect the top part of the eyelid. But when it's in volume, it affects the volume around it, and you have that. But when it's in surface, it only selects the surface area of whether you of the edge or the face, the surrounding area, but it doesn't affect the whole mesh or other parts of the mesh. So holding on the middle mouse button with the B key, you can increase and decrease the fall off, and it makes it easier to to create those kind of expressions, or at least to modify the mesh. It makes it easier. So it's the same with these tools, volume and surface. You need to know. It is the same with the it's the same with the BlenShape eraser tool. Again, if you are going to erase the effect over the eyebrow area, and if it's set to the surface, it will only delete the effect or remove the effect on the actual eyebrow mesh. It won't do anything to the body, so it's important that you select the volume. There might be occasions where you might have to have surface and volume on at the same time, but generally volume works for these kind of scenarios. So when it's surface, it just affects the area surrounding the edge or the point that you picked. But if there are layered meshes, the surface will always affect the top layer or the mesh that you selected. So it's important to pick the volume. So this is how you delete a BlenShape. So the idea is that we create, the way I do it, I create an extreme pose, an extreme shape, using both sides. Again, it's a matter of preference. So if I want to bring the eyebrows down, for instance, this is how I do it. Double click on my tool, and I don't want to do that. I want to make sure I set the volume, and that gives us quite a flat arc. It's not an arc basically, so it needs to be a bit more of an arc shape. So we want to retain the volume, and the way we do it, you can bring it down and up and still keep your character on model. But a good practice would be to check the axis orientation and then right underneath set it to an edge or a point, and I pick the edge generally. When I set it to an edge, let's say if I pick this one, then the direction of the move gizmo changes, and I can just do that. Just say, and then I go in and erase off or remove the effect of the BlenShape from the areas that I don't want. In this case, I don't want the eye or the eyelids to be affected because I want to leave them intact. Now it's a matter of preference how you want to achieve this. If you want to just carefully sculpt it down without affecting the eyelids, so that's up to you. If you don't want to go back and erase off certain areas, I like to have those big extremes, and then I want to tame them. But if you don't want to deal with it, and if you think that you're going to, by mistake, affect other areas and forget certain things, well, then you can carefully bring them down. And then I go in, use the BlenShape Smooth. Always erase stuff around the eyelid. You don't want them to be affected because you've got eyelid controls, and maybe you will have some fleshy eyes. Can erase them off. So I want to keep the original one intact. So we are going to talk about this in the next session when we start creating individual expressions, but just this is how I work. Once I created one main expression for both sides, I also want to make sure the topology is intact. I want to you will have changes, you know, but just even out surface areas. Because if you were to texture this character right now, it's just got a simple skin shader. If you don't have a uniform geometry, a uniform topology, you'll have a lot of stretching on the texture, especially if your texture has got bump maps and some other details. So the way I do it, to the expressions, the big one, I can carry on. I'll carry on smoothing this out anyway, but just to demonstrate how I work, I do that, and then I duplicate this, the first base, let's say eyelid down base. I'll duplicate that, turn off the original one, and from this one, from the second one onwards, I'll start creating expressions. For example, what I tend to do, I will erase off, let's say, this part completely. To get the inner eyelid down effect, I might just smooth, let's say, this part. Something like that. And then I'll duplicate it again. Eyebrow, actually not the lid. Eyebrow in down. And then the way I do it, I go back, pick the original one again. And excuse me, I might then say erase this part completely. I know you might think that it's very a crude way of working and a very rough, but it works for me. If you prefer to go in and manually, just step by step, in a kind of a single fashion where you want to create them one by one, then that's fine. You can do that as well. I like to erase off the effect of the blend shape from other areas completely, and then I can go in and smooth using the smooth blend shape option. There are still affecting other areas like this. So I forget I'm not using the smooth sculpting brush. I'm using the smooth tool in the actual blend shapes, or the blend shape tools I call them, and blend shape target tools, whatever you want to call them. So this could be the outer or the eyebrow out, down. Now you can see we've got three expressions. And then we'll have other expressions where the mid one is down or up, inner is up and down, and so on and so forth. So we'll have a set of expressions. What we do then actually is, let's say, if I just turn this off, just focus on this one, we've got that. So what I do, I carry on editing, and then we'll turn off the symmetry. I'll then erase the entire right hand side completely. Very important to do that. Now you might say, why did you do it all together? Well, again, I want to see the full expressions just to be sure how it looks. Sometimes when you just do work on one side, it doesn't look, you don't feel getting the right effect. I know it's a bit cumbersome, it takes a bit of time, but it's worth it. So say that we've got that, and I call this, let's say now, left eyebrow in, down. And what I can do now, duplicate this one, flip it, okay, now I've got the right side as well, and we can quickly rename them. So now we've got both sides, the right and the left. So how far you want to exaggerate this, that's the default. And the good thing with this is that if you realize that we've got some, if you realize that you've got some volume loss, as I have it right there a bit, again, we can fix it on one of the, say, the left side, and then flip it and duplicate it and flip it to the other side. So that's something that you can do. So that's how I would start creating those expressions. In the next section, I'm just going to talk about the key expressions, which I've already mentioned using Sergey's work. The cheeks and the mouth and so on and so forth. I'll keep it short, and then now I'll show you how to create controls for those expressions. So thank you for listening.